All right, so I had the opportunity to read through Andrew Tobra and Andre Isker's book titled A Biblical Guide to Taking Dominion and Discipling Nations. And I have some thoughts on it that I believe would be helpful for anyone looking to read the book or just seeking to understand the viewpoint of Christian nationalists. This is actually a conversation that has been plagued with a lot of caricatures and straw manning and just blatant false witnessing to the point where most Christians try their best to disassociate themselves from the label Christian nationalists altogether to avoid being lumped in with these types of, characterizations. And let me just be the first one to say that I feel that, right? Because I had the same knee jerk reaction when I first heard of the label Christian nationalist. All I could do was cringe when I heard the label, mainly because of the negative depiction of these so called Christian nationalists on the mainstream media platforms. And here are just some photos of these Christian nationalists that have been circulating on various news channels. As you can see, these photos depict a very specific demographic of individuals, that being American, white supremacists, right? That's the story of that these photos are telling. You saw some images of individuals holding up Confederate flags. You saw an image of a poster of a white Jesus and a MAGA hat. You saw a flag that said, Jesus is my savior and Trump is my president. I mean, you saw a lot in these photos that would give anyone a cause to pause, especially if you're a Christian, right? I mean, the last thing you would want to do is hinder your witness by being lumped in with these types of individuals. So, unfortunately, Christians have not been able to properly and formally evaluate and give proper judgment on this new label to see whether or not, is it appropriate to use or not, because it has been polluted with these types of imagery. And I'll be honest, for a while, I've been, I guess you would say, standoffish on discussing this topic because of that very reason. But I thought to myself, do I really want to further this type of framing of the discussion, or do I want to come to my own conclusions on the topic instead of the world dictate the terms of the discussion? And obviously, I'm making this video. I chose the latter because I truly think there is a lesson to be learned in all of this, right? I believe that the lesson that we all have to learn is that we should be fair in our representations of other people's perspectives, especially those whom we may disagree with, right? What doesn't help in this discussion is knowingly misrepresenting someone's view. In the history of humanity, actually, that has never been a good idea. All it does is cause more dissension and more toxic dialogue. And more often than not, the misrepresentation of the opposing side's perspective often leads people to become more sympathetic to their view once they realize that the other side has been engaging in malpractice in the dialogue this whole entire time. If the view is wrong, then you don't need to misrepresent it. You don't have to misrepresent the Nazis to know that they were wrong on a whole lot of things, right? You only misrepresent, the other side if you're afraid that they may be right on something, or a whole lot of things, and you're scared that you don't have enough information or talking points to properly debunk the other side's position. So that's what kind of led me to read this book. I wanted to know what Christian nationalists like Andrew Tobra and Andre Isker actually believed. And that's not to say that I didn't have any concerns going into this book, because I most certainly did. But what I was willing to do for the sake of properly engaging in this discussion was kind of suspend my concerns until I had read the book for myself. So I read it and I have some thoughts on it. Let's talk about it. So first, I want to discuss some of the things that I liked in this book. I want to start on a positive note, and then I'll work my way to the concerns. There's always that debate on whether you should, go negative to positive or positive to negative. But I think this topic has had its fair share of negative attention, so I think it's appropriate to go positive to negative on this review. So, starting with the positive, one of the things that I appreciated about this book was that it was very easy to read. It wasn't bogged down with a bunch of theological terms that could possibly dissuade others from really grasping the author's message of the book. And made sure to keep it nice and simple, and I imagine this was probably done on purpose to avoid people creating, sound bites and taking them out of context. And that is not to say they did not get controversial, because they most certainly did. But they were clear on their stances and on various controversial issues, such as their view on homosexuality, their charges against anti-Semitism and white supremacy and things of that nature. The authors discussed topics like these in various lengths. Some of them had whole chapters dedicated to them. Others had just paragraphs, but I appreciated them nevertheless for talking about it instead of ignoring these charges as if it just doesn't exist, right? I also appreciated certain points of the message that the authors were trying to convey in this book, right? A couple of things that comes to mind is that I appreciated their call for Christians to come out of hiding, in a sense, and call for them to be bold in their faith, and for Christians to walk in the reality that Jesus has authority not only in heaven, but also on earth. Both of these messages, I believe, are needed in today's society, because some Christians have started to kind of fade away into the background to avoid being persecuted. And some of them do this to take on the mentality that the world is essentially the devil's playground, and, where Christ has no authority. And I just want to say that both of these mentalities are absolutely horrible. And I'm glad that the authors pointed it out in this book. And it's one thing I definitely respect. The last thing I would like to point out that could be viewed as a positive or a negative, depending on what you're expecting out of a book like this, is its brevity. The book is only 78 pages long if you count the two, sections of the preamble as well. So it's not a long book by any means. I believe I finished it within a couple of hours, actually, which, now that I think about it, should tell you everything that you need to know about how short this book really is. So if you're a person who is interested in the topic but doesn't want to step your foot too deep into the murky waters, then this book is for you. However, if you're a person looking for a more robust overview of Christian nationalism, then I'm going to say that this book isn't for you. This actually leads me to the things that I disliked in the book, because I was actually somewhat in the middle on this one. I wasn't looking for a robust overview of the topic, but I wasn't looking for something quite like this either. This book was just simply too short for me. And I believe the authors could have cut out major portions of this book and replaced it with more substantive content on the matter of Christian nationalism, and it would have been so much better, right? A lot of this book can be described as a kind of rallying cry, if you will. It's like a Christian politician giving one of his speeches at a rally to get the people, riled up for his campaign or something. There's a lot of repetition in this book, which, you would expect from a rally speech. There are a lot of catchy slogans, which is also something you expect from a rally speech. And there's a lot of what we call drive-bys in this book, where the author doesn't fully delve into a topic, but rather gives a quick synopsis and then moves on, which, comes to think of it, is also something that you would expect from a rally speech, right? All that to say, look, don't expect too much from this book. Expect to come away with, a kind of basic understanding of Christian nationalism that gets you, your feet into the door of the conversation. But once you're in the door, you better not say anything, because you technically still don't know much about what Christian nationalism actually is. And this leads me to another concern that I have with this book, which is that, I don't believe it did a great job of thoroughly addressing the many concerns that people have with this movement. Take, for example, the issue of racism. And I know, you're probably tired of hearing this charge, this accusation being levied on Christians, more specifically on white Christians. But one thing I would caution you on is disregarding this accusation altogether. Right? Like it or dislike it, unfortunately, we got to deal with it, because if you don't, the accusation is just going to come back more aggressively, right? And this is especially true for Andrew Tobra, as he is the CEO of a social media platform called Gab, which he actually promotes in his book. The website is supposed to be a Christian alternative to social media platforms like Twitter and Facebook, but it's starting to be known as anything but Christian. And I know anybody can type anything in Wikipedia, and it should not be used as a reliable source, especially when you are, engaging in scholarly work. But I just want to read you the description of Gab on Wikipedia. It says this: Gab is an American alt tech microblogging and social networking service known for its far right user base, widely described as a haven for neo Nazis, racists, white supremacists, white nationalists, anti Semites, the alt right, supporters of Donald Trump, conservatives, right libertarians, and believers in conspiracy theories such as QAnon. Gab has attracted users and groups who have been banned from other social media platforms and users seeking alternatives to mainstream social media platforms. Now, I don't know about you, but that is not the type of description you want to have on your Wikipedia page, right? And you can just disregard it all you want, but that's literally the second search result if you try to look Gab up on Google. What makes matters worse is that when you go to the website, you see comments like these on there, right? Now, if you're Andrew Tobra and you don't see why you need to dedicate more than a couple of paragraphs to talking about this issue, then I don't know what to tell you. I mean, some of these comments are just flat out disgraceful. I mean, I would think that some of these comments should really start to raise some red flags in your mind. At least I would think. Now, I understand that Gab's goal is to promote free speech, but I believe this exposes the fundamental problem with how both sides of the discussion are engaging in it. Both sides lack nuance, right? You should be free to speak your opinion on certain matters, but that doesn't mean you're free to do so without consequence. Everyone knows that, right? If you had a good parent who popped you whenever you said something out of pocket, you knew not to say certain things around them. And that taught you how to discern what things should be said and what things should not be said, right? In a way, you were being censored. Now I know when the right hears that word, our friends, they kind of get triggered because it's kind of like, oh, we look at censorship as this impediment to our freedom of speech. But one thing I would say is it's important to know that not all censorship is bad, just like not all speech is good. The issue is not black and white, it's gray. And it's a good example. One good example of this is this website. Now, I'm going to suspend my comments on this website because I don't want you to miss the broader point that I'm trying to make, which is this. If you're going to write a book on Christian nationalism, you need to do more due diligence in addressing the major concerns of the very movement that you're promoting, right? You have to show people who are on the other side, that you take matters like these seriously. If all you address is right-wing issues in your book and, kind of like concerns like abortion, immigration, Zionism, etc., then I believe you have officially failed the assignment in deterring your critics and skeptics' concerns. And I'm not saying that these right-wing issues are not real issues that need to be addressed, because I believe they are. Abortion needs to be addressed. It's one of the greatest, evils in human history, right? And I believe a whole slew of other right-wing issues need to be addressed. What I am saying is that you could do both. You can address the right-wing issues and you can address, kind of the left-leaning issues as well. You could give significant attention to both. Instead of giving a political rally speech, give the people substance so that we can actually have a legitimate conversation about Christian nationalism. Again, when I think of Christian nationalism, I'm thinking about the nation. What are the nation's concerns? Not just one side of the aisle's concerns, right? Unfortunately, look, I believe you just don't get this in this book, right? Again, if you want to get your feet into the door, then I guess this is the book for you. But if you're like me and you want it just a little bit more than just getting your foot in the door, then I would personally look somewhere else. I know I may catch some dislikes for this one, but that's my honest opinion. Let me know your honest opinion in the comment section. Did you read the book? Did you like it, dislike it? Let me know, right? As always, if you like the video, please like, share, and subscribe. It helps the channel out a lot. I'm trying to get to 300 subscribers. So if you can help me do that, I would appreciate it. You're awesome. Also, don't forget to check out my conversation with my good friend Mitch on the Least of These podcast as we discuss Christian nationalism and gave our 2 cents on the issue. And this is where I kind of delve into my thoughts about Christian nationalism as a whole a little bit more there. If you thought it was helpful, it will be amazing if you would, share this with your family and friends. And hopefully you can leave a comment in the Least of These podcast episode as well. But all that being said, I hope you enjoyed this review. Until next time, guys, peace.